What will it take for it to stop mass shootings in America? Impossible. The amount of cunes in the country plus root individualistic society plus rampant access to the internet breeding highly radicalized echo chambers plus media sensationalism plus poor financial and mental health opportunities equals disaster. I'm all for doing something new, but there is no clear-cut answer. Einstein couldn't solve this one. People want things to be better, they're just unwilling to sacrifice anything personally to deal with it. California, for instance, considered one of the most liberal states in the country, tried setting up government housing to address homelessness. But the second people realized those homeless people would now be living in units down the street from their homes, they conveniently changed their minds and decided, this isn't the best way to deal with the issue, lol. It's unsurprising to a certain extent. This country is founded upon concepts of individualism and personal liberty rather than communalism, where me and my success are seemingly more important than society as a whole. People are too miserable due to so many things, some are self-inflicted, some are not, to actually be willing to do anything about it. Emo. One of the first units to be built was supposed to go out down the street from where I lived, and I was 100% for it. The argument that we will see homeless all over our streets is ludicrous because we already had homeless all over our streets. I bet it was more about people protecting the value of their homes. I am a homeowner and I'd be willing to sacrifice half its value or more if that meant housing for those that need it. I love this attitude. I wish more people could see it this way. If more people were willing to take a small hit for the greater good, we'd all be better off. I heard a quote a while back and I forget where I heard it, but it was something like, "No one wins until we all win," and while I'm sure that there are arguments to be made in the contrary, the sentence really resonated with me personally. What's funny is when there's an issue and the other person expects you to back down over a NIMBY supposition. My usual one is nuclear waste storage. The long story short is that there's a new-ish technology for nuclear waste storage that pretty much solves all the big problems with long-term waste internment. Roughly speaking, you use oil drilling tech to dig down approximately 2 to 5 miles, turn the drill sideways, then pack in the waste there, fill the whole thing up with water-impermeable concrete. By the time water inevitably intrudes on the casks and then brings the radioactive particles to the surface, 80–120,000 years will have passed and things will have degraded to safety. The guy, who was rabidly anti-nuclear, basically declared, "Oh yeah. Then would you volunteer your backyard be used for this?" And when my response was that I most certainly would if it meant helping us shift from coal to nuclear, he outright declared I was lying and that I'd be out there protesting it. A complete culture change. If the Columbine school shooting was a person, it'd be old enough to vote, drink, serve in the military, and would have graduated college. It happened 23 years ago. And yet here we are. Forgive me for believing that nothing will change in our lifetime. And the generations that have been most impacted by school violence aren't able to get a good foothold in national politics. Reasons for that can be debated elsewhere. Gen X and millennials have been watching kids our age get shot since Columbine. Gen Z is living through it firsthand more and more. And yet Congress continues to be dominated by our parents and grandparents who have proven over and over again that they think, thoughts and prayers, will make everything better. Was there another shooting in America on top of the Buffalo one? Is that why there are suddenly all these MacReddit questions? You got answers about the one most recently, but we have also had a shooting at a Taiwanese church, seemingly gang-related violence near the nicer area of Chicago, and now this. It's been 9 days. Elementary school shooting, third deadliest in America's history, has happened in the past few days as well. I want to know how an 18-year-old gets in the frame of mind where he wants to shoot up an elementary school. Also want to know how he got in. I can't get in my kid's school without at least getting buzzed in. Edit. I see in the news. I work at an elementary school. Not all of them have fence gates. Anyone could walk into my school from the wide open front or through the entrance behind the school that goes into a neighborhood. Also, my school doesn't have big buildings. All of the classrooms open right to the outside. Nothing stops someone from walking right into my classroom other than a locked door. This setup is quite common all around California. The fact that this needs to even be a thing is wild to me as a Swedish person. I walk past my old elementary school and high school sometimes and they're just normal houses with a playground with a small picket fence around them. Always have been. The fact that anyone even needs to build a school with safety systems or escape routes is unfathomable to my mind. I had a friend from the US and unsuccessfully tried to convince her that my university in Switzerland doesn't need strong security, metal detectors etc. to be safe. And that it's fine that the building is open to everyone. She wouldn't believe me, despite there having never been any issues in the institution's history. I got way too many replies to reply to everyone individually, but I just wanted to mention that I'm OFC not making a comment on what I personally believe to be the norm in the US, e.g. all schools having metal detectors. I am merely stating what my friend believed to be an appropriate level of security at a school, i.e. my Swiss university being open to the public not being safe enough. It's clear to me that her opinion doesn't stand for everyone in the US. Metal detectors in schools is also some absurd dystopian shit to me. My old schools just has, I don't know, doors. I mean, I guess they lock them at night and stuff, but for the rest of the day kids just come and go. America is wild. I grew up in South Africa and went to some pretty crap schools filled with some of the dregs of society. We had underpaid teachers who didn't really care etc. I was skateboard kid who was seen as a freak due to skating and liking metal and other music. I took my fair share of beatings from the bullies at school and outside of school, but I never ever had a desire to walk into school and murder the bullies or teachers or anyone else for that matter. I think the problem in America is much bigger than a weird kid going mad. It's got to be societal for anyone to harbor that much hate for life. Just my honest opinion and from my perspective. Yes, we have a rot in the heart of American society. As a Reddit psychologist, I can't help but think a lot of it is main character syndrome. One of the core tenets of American society is that you are fundamentally important and special and good things will happen to you just because you're you. But the truth is that that isn't at all true for a vast majority of that population. And some of those people can't or won't accept that, so they resort to insane theories or insane actions to make them feel special again. It's rampant individualism. Individuals are glorified in US culture, and to a certain extent that's not a bad thing. Countries who are disdainful of individual rights and freedoms tend to be oppressive. But with America we're learning that it can go too far the other way. That if you worship individual freedom you sacrifice community, common decency, the desire to help others, your safety nets, and many other rights that most other countries enjoy. To use a Star Trek analogy, one thing many Americans think they are the Federation to, say, China's dominion. But most countries see them more as the Ferengi. I think American society is headed for a breakdown honestly, because these things are minimum requirements for a functioning community. Ironically, that means Americans aren't as free as they think, or rather they have traded certain freedoms for others which they have in great quantity, like the freedom to buy a gun. Really hope we see these issues worked out in my lifetime. America is such a young country, there's bound to be teething problems. But its founding principles are so good, just overstated in modern America. It is my opinion as an American, that our society relishes depriving itself help. It is every man for himself. And that leaves a lot of people starving for something, be it food, healthcare, mental health care, childcare, a sense of community, companionship, parents who are present, justice, a future, somewhere to turn, everything. Combine that with the dead end of late-stage capitalism and a culture of bootstraps and gun violence, well, it's not a big leap. That is not to say that we do not have kind, helpful people in our country, but our policies are brutal and negligent, which does trickle down unlike our wealth. Thank you for all the awards. I am overwhelmed and will spread them around to pay it forward. Meanwhile, I am heartbroken for those families and sad for our country. If you ever need to talk, message me. I am not a therapist, but I can be an ear for you. There is an astounding and disgusting number of people in this country who think that being bullied and struggling in general without any relief in sight will make you a stronger, better person. If you came out of that system a broken person, that's just because you were too weak. I utterly hate this aspect of American culture. This is absolutely the answer. This gun issue is a symptom of an enormous societal problem. But the answer is literally going to require breaking the entire system down, and with all this money and corporate bullshit that has its roots so deep into our system and politicians' pockets, it'll never change. I mean, there really needs to be massive overhaul. We think gun control is the answer, and if it is, it'll only be very temporary. The smallest injury can destroy middle-class families, and the rest in poverty are already stuck. One mistake and you're fucked. There is no safety net. You can't quit and try to start a business. Who'll pay the mortgage? It'll never succeed long-term anyway. Can't try to find your true job calling that makes you happy, because then how can you afford to eat? The way we work and are chained to our jobs and desks is absolutely soul-sucking. You take so many intelligent and capable people and beat them down. We're all so much smarter and capable than we think, but our system doesn't like that. It's the 9-to-5 grind, work 60 hours a week just to have the privilege to pay $500 per month for health insurance you hope you never have to use. Parents can't even see their kids anymore. They're trying to work 3 jobs. When the kid spends their afternoon getting in trouble, their parents are working. You go blame the parents when they're trying to provide. I mean, what the fuck? If the parents are at home but get evicted for not paying rent, then we bash on them for not working. We're all in the same boat, and instead of stopping to think about the real issue, we're literally blaming each other. When you don't give a fuck anymore, violence becomes the answer from pure rage. Yay, well, I am broke and never shot anyone up. Cool. Maybe you have a higher tolerance or have some other thing keeping you going, but not everyone has that. Or they did and they snapped. Some really are like, the world did nothing for me and got a bad hand and here we are. Like, I'm happy most of us have self-control, but if school shootings are increasing, suicide rates probably are too, especially amongst men. I am surprised workplace shootings aren't more common, tbh. Because if not now, then soon, because the way things are run is not sustainable. There's some facade that we're all okay, and we're really not. Edit. I'm not saying there shouldn't be some reform on gun access and use, but to just stop there or remove 2A entirely is not going to solve anything long term. There are so many interconnected moving parts here. Edit 2. I know PPL are going to hyper-focus on parts of this post. I don't have the time to elaborate on every single detail. For every one person who goes and shoots a school, there are others of us, men and women, who are depressed, on drugs, suicidal, committed suicide, engaging in self-harm, and you don't see it. You have affluent guys engage in acts of sexual violence. Mass shootings are the only effects worth talking about, though, that actually bring the rest of these collective issues to light. You'll never read that suicide rates and rapes have increased, because it's not violent enough. Even though these things are all connected. There's an entire new generation of kids that's hopeless about a future that hasn't even started for them yet. People aren't born with hate and evil in them, something causes that shit. Gun control is just the way for everyone who's well off to hide an issue instead of dealing with it. We don't want anyone to die in schools, but whatever happens in poverty-stricken areas, who cares? Ignorance is bliss, fam. And to all you leftists who keep screaming, critical thinking. This is critical thinking, not following agendas by the right politicians who blindly promotes 2A simply because gun, and the left politicians who knows that if gun control is put in place, the real social issues will be covered and forgotten indefinitely. The Dems are as much a problem as the GOP.